July 14th, 1986. Bon Jovi sets off on its longest and most ambitious tour to date, taking in Australia, Asia, Europe, and both North and South America. They will be on the road for over 15 months.
The band toured their asses off. I mean, they didn't stop. And that's one thing that the band was up for. They were not afraid of hard work.
Back then, you toured to sell albums. You're playing huge effing venues. And at a certain point, that's very alluring. But Jon is the one that's running the show.
You know you made it when they have their own plane and they have the name of the band on the side. It was a really cool experience for me as a photographer. I can only imagine, you know, what they were thinking.
At the age of 24, Jon is now in charge of this huge enterprise worth millions of dollars.
You know, he was the sergeant. I mean, the major, actually. You know, he was the one running the show, and it was a little more obvious that Jon was calling the shots.
Jon Bon Jovi is an excellent CEO. He runs a corporation. He makes investments in the corporation. He brings people in around him that are very strong and very powerful to counsel him. He's a businessman.
Well, you know, there's just a guy that was focused, determined, and committed to it, that's all.
Most frontmen get into show business because they want to be adored. But he's literally somebody who's looking at the bottom line. He's thinking not only about structuring the set list, but he's also thinking about, were the tickets too expensive? So he's sort of thinking about the customer experience. And that is kind of an unusual thing.
Jon is now a full-time CEO. November 1986. The band has been on the road for 4 months, and it's beginning to take its toll.
You're playing like hundreds of shows a year. It's bound to wear and tear you. And Jon took every opportunity to make sure his success was happening now. He didn't want it to go away. He pushed himself.
Jon was burnt, and he's a perfectionist on stage. So if the show's not giving the fans what they want, he finds a way through.
You would think it's all fun and games going on tour with a band, but it's probably one of the more stressful things you can do. You just get tired of it. Oh, here we go. Here's sound check again. You know, it all adds up.
But despite the pressure, Jon refuses to slow down.
He just keeps going. He just really doesn't know when to stop. Creative people generally don't know when to stop. And when you're driven like that, nothing is good enough.
Jon liked winning. He was motivated by that sense of success. Success, it's really kind of simple.
His drive to be bigger than anyone, to be the biggest artist in the world, was because I think he wanted to be loved more by his family and show them that he was the one that could take care of everyone. And I think that was his driving force.
January 1987. Bon Jovi has now been on the road for 6 months, playing over 200 concerts across Asia, America, and Europe. And Jon's preoccupation with success has turned into a form of obsession.
Yeah, you can schedule night after night, year after year touring, but your body's going to pack it in at some stage.
Back-to-back shows, that would do anyone, no matter who you are and how good you are as a vocalist. And his voice started, you know, becoming not as good as it should be. It was painful.
Even when his voice starts to fail, he sees it as another challenge he needs to overcome, not a sign he should slow down.
Jon was taking steroid injections because he's having a problem maintaining his vocal prowess. And, you know, that's happened to people who've toured too much.
But the steroid injections put more strain on his exhausted body. He is often violently sick before going on stage, and again at the end of the show.
ends up just looking ashen-faced with dark rings under his eyes.
As the tour drags on, he increasingly struggles to hit the high notes in songs like Living on a Prayer. The difficulties with his vocals were particularly apparent when he performed the song in New York in 1987.
I know the guys in the band were covering for him on vocal harmonies. When they say, oh, living on a prayer, he's not singing it.
In an interview in 1987, Jon gives a rare insight into his struggles.
What's the worst part?
Not being able to sing, having to go out there and fake it, that's real hard.
When Jon's voice begins to fail, I think this was the ultimate challenge to his ambitious and controlling personality, because this is not something that he could just work his way out of. His voice was failing and he just had to wait for it to heal. Sometimes even when you work really hard, there are still certain things in life that you just really can't control, and you're just gonna have to sit back and take it easy until things get better.
For visionary Jon Bon Jovi, the dream of being a rock star has turned into a nightmare.
For a line of work that is all about bringing joy, you don't get a lot of joy doing it. Sure, the 90 minutes that you're on stage, that's exquisite, that's ecstatic, but at the end of the night, he's alone in a hotel room, and those things get old fast. Jon became stressed, he was depressed, he was lonely. It's actually really horrible, monotonous, boring, soul-destroying, body-draining life being on the road.
Bon Jovi has reached the pinnacle of its career. But as the self-appointed CEO, he can't give up on the business he has built.
He drove himself to continue to move. He didn't keep moving, he would die or stop. That's the good news, and the bad news about being this needy about success, because ultimately it becomes who you are and not what you are. So there's a lot of things missing. So I would say that there's an element of insecurity, not just Jon, and most of these people who are driven continually to become even more successful. You know, how many billions do you need to live on?
Intent on keeping this level of success, Jon immediately records a follow-up to Slippery When Wet that will pay homage to his roots, New Jersey.
Jon and the band were very proud of their Jersey roots. They had a big following. They were stars in Jersey, obviously, before they were stars, I think, elsewhere. I mean, the hometown crowd really loved them.
Featuring the hit single Bad Medicine, the album becomes the band's second #1 in America. To promote the album, Jon takes the band on tour again, their fourth in as many years. Now that he's made it, and with all the pressures on him, Jon realizes there's still something missing from his life. High school sweetheart, Dorothea.
It's funny, for someone who wants to be a star, he wasn't drawn to stars in terms of dating. I think Dorothea made him feel more grounded. Just somebody who respects you, but is also not going to put up with your bullshit. And Dorothea wasn't going to put up with Jon's BS.
On April 29th, 1989, while on tour, Jon proposes to Dorothea.
They're in Vegas anyway, and Jon says, to heck with it, let's just get married. And that does not especially go over well with the record company, because they're like, yikes, we have this beautiful man kitten rock star whose job is to pretend to be available. They thought perhaps he killed the goose that laid the golden egg, but in fact it didn't have any serious effect on record sales, so it was fine.
But there's no honeymoon. Jon is back on stage that night, and the tour drags on for a further 10 months. His marriage provides him with some respite from the unrelenting stress, but the mantle of world champions can be a heavy one.
He can master any situation. Can't throw him any curves.